I'll call this regional council meeting to order. Please be advised that tonight's meeting is available for the public to attend virtually, is being streamed and recorded. Should virtual attendees wish to address council during either the public comment period or the question and answer period, use the raise hands feature on your webinar controls. When it is your turn and are prompted, unmute your microphone, state your name and ask your question. Once your question is ended, you will be muted again. Council and CAO additions. I have no additions. Council additions. Councillor Souls.
I just wanted to have a brief discussion about a truck convoy.
Thank you. CAO additions.
Yes, Mayor, I have a couple PHO requirements in the rec center and Northern Rockies Senior Society grant application.
Thank you. Can I get a motion, please, to adopt the agenda as amended? Moved by Councillor Andrews, seconded by Councillor Penny. All those in favor? Carried. Adoption of the minutes of Special Regional Council January 6, 2022, the Regional Council meeting of January 10th, 2022, and the Special Regional Council of January 10th, 2022. Can I get a motion, please, to adopt those minutes? Moved by Councillor Andrews, seconded by Councillor Souls. All those in favor? That's carried unanimously. Thank you. Are there any virtual attendees who wish to comment on tonight's agenda? Very well. Thank you. Proclamations, Heritage Week. That's good. Thank you. The Northern Rockies Regional Municipality Proclamation, Heritage Week, February 21st to 27th. Whereas the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality celebrates a rich history that is manifest in its museum, public library, historic sites, cultural landscapes, and whereas these assets are a source of invaluable information about the history of our community and stories about them provide a vital legacy to guide and nurture future generations, and whereas stories about the past strengthen our community's unique identity and foster a sense of place. And whereas Heritage Week begins on National Heritage Day, the third Monday of February, and whereas communities throughout British Columbia mark Heritage Week to celebrate their unique history and heritage, and whereas the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality values and wishes to conserve their rich and diverse heritage resources. And now, therefore, I, Gary Foster, Mayor of the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality, do hereby proclaim the week of February 21st to February 27th, 2022 as Heritage Week in the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality. Mrs. Aglinski.
I apologize if this is out of order, but I would just like to thank Mayor and Council for reading the proclamation.
Thank you. Reports, bylaws, administration report number 8, business licenses and regulations bylaw. Ms. Jacobs and Ms. Glaves.
All right, hello Mayor and Council. Before you is a report that discusses the option to update our existing business license and regulation bylaw. As you'll note, the current business license bylaw was last adopted by NRM Mayor and Council back in 2010. And in recent years, it's been observed that the current bylaw, some provisions within the bylaw are vague, unclear, or irrelevant to the regional municipality at this time. And as such, we've prepared a report that recommends the option to update the bylaw for increased clarity and transparency, both for staff and the public. So the report before you also notes that a council's business licensing authority comes from the community charter. And specifically, this authority is delegated to local governments by the province of British Columbia. And specifically, sections 8 as well as sections 59 through 61 discuss a council's authority to regulate in relation to business. I'll pass it over to Jasmine to discuss some of the sections in the bylaw that we would be looking to update.
Under the current bylaw, the business license classifications are not clearly defined. Several sections in the bylaw are vague, and as a result, it can be difficult to interpret sections, including those that relate to license renewals, requirements, and fees. In reviewing the bylaw, staff have identified an opportunity to update sections, including the definitions, classifications of business types, and process to issue licenses. Updating these areas would be beneficial in creating clearer processes as well as transparency of how fees are determined. Based on examples from neighboring communities, it would be recommended that the business license bylaw be updated to include improvements such as more detailed definitions that are consistent with the official community plan and zoning bylaw. Under the separate license section, it would be suggested that the bylaw be revised to further clarify when separate licenses are required. Within the classification and fees section, to minimize the number of business categories for consistency when determining business type and associated fees, and to update mapping within Schedule B to reflect Federal Reserve lands excluded from NRM governance, similar to that included in the official community plan. I will pass that back to Gabrielle here.
So to address some of the concerns with the current bylaw, as well as include some of the recommendations that Jasmine had described, we propose bringing back a report to council to review the classifications and fees associated with business licenses. And we also recommend that a revised business license and regulation bylaw be brought back to council for review. So at this time, we welcome council's feedback and look forward to answering any questions you may have. Thank you.
Are there any questions for Ms. Glaves and Ms. Jacobs? Ms. Councillor Penny?
Just got a question. I've been actually wondering this for a while. I know when we issue a business license and then the fire department does normally a yearly check when they're for fire hazards, that sort of thing. Is there anything else that the community can do to ensure that a business is properly insured so residents are protected properly when they use certain businesses? Is there anything like that in anywhere? I know you're going to be checking with neighboring communities and that sort of thing. I'm just wondering. I don't even want to use an example because I don't want to point at any. But you know, if we have a business is operating here in our community, they're providing a service for somebody. If they're not properly insured and that sort of thing, and they have some sort of incident, then our residents could potentially be at risk and not properly covered. So I'm just wondering if that could be part of business licensing.
Mr. Barry?
I was gonna say, I'm not aware, but we can absolutely check in to see if it's something that we have the ability to ask or not, because I'm not aware if we can or can't, to be honest with you. Councillor Penny.
I believe most of the legislation around insurance, one of the parts of it is that you can't insure somebody else's property. So insurance generally operates to protect the individual, and it's up to the individual to protect himself. I would be surprised if there's any ability to make sure that a business is insured.
Yeah.
Mrs. McIver, did you have something?
I was just going to note that currently insurance isn't a provision that's included in our bylaw.
Councillor Penny.
I'll just add, I would also say, when I was thinking about it, was more of properly licensed, not just you come in here and purchase a business license, but if you're going and you're expecting a professional service from said business, you know, are we regulating that these businesses are actually properly licensed to operate the business that they're operating? that in turn would,
Hmm,
yeah, I have worried about it over the years for different things, different businesses, and do we actually have anything at all, or are we allowed to? I have no idea, but I'd like to check into it. We're going to have a report anyways. It'd be great to have that included.
So currently, the only license requirements that so a condition of a business license, if you're in the food service or other health related industry like aesthetics or you're dealing with human contact that the health authority would oversee. Basically, we don't approve the business license until we've had approval from the health authority for whatever that type of business is for their proper permits. So that's the only place where we have a condition for approval for other license beyond our own.
Councillor Penny? Go ahead, Councillor Goering.
So would that relate then to in-home daycares? So that has to be approved by the health authority. Okay, thanks.
Very well. Do you need a motion for that, or will that just be encompassing in their investigations then? You would like a motion?
We can take back the discussion and include it when we come back with more information.
Okay, perfect. If there's no other questions for Ms. Jacobs? And Ms. Glaves? Very well, thank you.
Did we?
Oh, I'm
make a
sorry,
motion?
we need a motion here. Sorry, my mistake. Can I get a motion then, please?
I'll make option 1 with the additions that we.
Very well. The seconder for that motion is Councillor Goering. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Penny. Administration report number 9. Speaking to the report, Ms. Shepherd, Share Shed.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. This report comes in follow-up to Council's request for information regarding share sheds. Share sheds are places where residents can dispose of and obtain items that might traditionally be put in the landfill but are still usable or hold value. These facilities can provide opportunities for social initiatives, waste diversion efforts, and community partnerships, though they require significant management to promote and moderate appropriate use. The report details several logistics to be considered for both the construction or establishment of a share shed and its ongoing operations, with the main points being the location considered for utility hookups, site security, and social responsibility components such as accessibility, and operating considerations, specifically staffing costs and health and safety management. Some challenges reported from other municipalities include this idea of free dumping, which has had significant challenges for municipalities. Another consideration is to note the community's current opportunities to divert used goods, which include fundraising initiatives such as secondhand shops and nonprofit organizations. In the report, there is a full list of organizations and the materials they accept in the Northern Rockies. And of course, in modern times, residents are often using various social networks and social media platforms to give, buy, and sell items. And this report is for your information.
Thank you very much. Comments on this? Councillor Penny?
Great report. Thank you very much. You really opened my eye to just trying to set something up for people to be able to share things back and forth. Many things that I would have never thought of for sure. But just to, I guess, clarify what I had in mind when I brought this forward originally, when I spoke to the operator at the landfill, apparently she was told she would have a sea can down there where she could divert things way back when she started, and I have no idea. I mean, it's just speak with her. She would basically have a sea can off to the side down there that she could divert things that she felt would be a good use to people instead of it ending up in the landfill, whether that was furniture that was coming getting dumped off, that, if somebody needed something in their house burned, da, 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 da. And even though I see this list of places that we can be diverting items right now, every single time I visit the landfill, I see things that definitely could be utilized by someone else. Unfortunately, they go to waste. So I don't know how really to go forward here with all this information, but my idea originally was we put a CCAN down there, speak to our operator on the scales before we do so, find out if she'd be willing to oversee it. I do really like the idea that they still have to pay the minimal, whatever the minimal charge is to go in, because the last thing you'd want to do is make the decision on whether you can put it in there for free or you can put it there for $5. So, yeah, I'd still like to try to move forward on a very low end basis.
Councillor Andrews.
Yeah, I have to agree. I didn't really think this would be as extensive. I was thinking like a three-walled lean-to. People could put things in and out, and once a quarter you walked in there with the cat and pushed it all out if you had to, because nobody else wanted it. But obviously we can't do it that way. But I would definitely still like to pursue it and see what we can do, making it as user-friendly, as simple as possible.
When I read that, I was thinking that people might use this as a dump, but if we put it down at the landfill, there's no incentive for somebody to put their garbage in that shed when they can just as easily put it in the container. So I didn't really see that as much of an issue. Nobody's going to go to that shed and put garbage there when they can just as easily dump it in the container. The second thing I thought about was I've forgotten what it was. Mr. Barry had mentioned that lighting, you have to provide lighting for an enclosed area. You can't let people go into a darkened area or they could injure themselves. So we would have to provide lighting, but no heat in a place like that. If we applied flashlights, you go, yeah. I really think it is a good idea. I don't want to see it become expensive or something that Councillor Penny didn't envision. I think some simple idea of somebody could drop off a lawnmower when they just bought a brand new one, even though their old lawnmower is still working, make it available to somebody else. That's what I had envisioned. So any other comments? Councillor Souls.
There's a digital version of this, and it's for Nelson Buy and Sell and Give Away.
Mm.
And it actually reaches some of the demographic, and it does actually, I know of things that have transferred and gone, and it works. It's just that this is a bigger issue, a bigger problem. And so maybe this is just another leg of the problem. A leg of solution if we actually added another intermediate drop-off spot. But I too do think that the idea of dropping off at a cost is important, actually, because it will be abused regardless of where it's located, if it's not.
Councillor Gerwing.
I really like the idea of the landfill operator diverting. She's looking at it, she's deciding where it's gonna go. Like, she can then question the person, does it work, does it not? If she's willing to do that, then I would be most interested in putting a CCAN or something out there on a pilot basis to, let's just see how it goes. Doesn't have to be for the rest of our lives, could just be 6 months or whatever, and from now till spring, and then have some sort of big open house at spring, or I don't know. I'd be most interested in pursuing it though.
And perhaps some way of cleaning this out every once in a while for articles that are not used, somebody thought was useful, like a vacuum cleaner or something that nobody used. So I still think that the idea is valid, Councillor Penny. Maybe we could ask staff to come back with some options here of how we could accomplish something along those lines.
I'd be happy to make that motion, but request for staff to look into how to word it exactly, but basically a CCAN. I just keep thinking of CCAN is easy. It's a sturdy building. It's instant. It's dropped off, and other than leveling it up, and if we have to have some sort of ramp to it, whatever, and lighting. I don't know if there's where power is accessible.
Maybe we could get a cost estimate of
Yeah,
putting one
we could
down
get
there.
Some sort of idea of what we'd be looking at.
Mr. Barry,
Now that you've got some discussion back and forth, it gives us some ideas what you're thinking about, what you're looking at. So we'll investigate some options and also chat with the attendant.
Obviously, because if she's no longer interested, then it's over. Really, I mean, it's
yeah,
plain and simple. But
So we'll,
it was brought up, her and I had a discussion about it a while back, and she seemed very, very interested in it still, so.
for sure, we'll bring something back for council.
Did you get enough? Okay.
moved by Counselor Penny, seconded by Counselor Gerwin. All those in favor? Carried. Admin report number 10, supporting schools with green waste diversion for decision. Ms. Shepherd.
Hi again. So this report comes in follow-up to council's request that staff explore options to support schools individually in green waste diversion initiatives. As council is aware, SD 81 is interested in implementing processes to participate in green waste diversion on an ongoing basis. While of course there are numerous long-term benefits to this, there will be some increased costs during the transition period. Previously, council expressed interest in supporting schools on the individual basis as they implement different waste management processes. What we heard back was that there are commonalities throughout the organization requiring consistency to create synergies and realize efficiencies in both operations and cost savings. The analysis section includes an overview of SD 81's Fort Nelson operations, as well as cost estimates for green waste disposal services. We've included the price list for the green waste pickup service, and the amounts there for the green waste tipping fees are also from the Fort Nelson provider. Requests for financial assistance from the schools included references to provisions for tipping fees for green waste bins, as well as classroom containers and consumables such as bin liners. And considering SD 81's ongoing commitment to sustainability and their request for assistance in furthering waste diversion efforts, it's recommended that if council wishes to provide support to SD 81, it could be in the form of a startup fund provided at the district level, which would allow the autonomy for the organization to allocate resources most efficiently for their purposes. So there's a request in the 2022 budget to carry forward funds from the 2021 solid waste diversion community initiatives budget. A couple of options council may wish to consider include allocating an amount to support SD 81's participation in green waste diversion for the remainder of this school year, or allocating an amount from the 2022 budget as an environmental grant to support ongoing waste diversion initiatives.
Thank you. Any questions for Ms. Shepherd? Counselor Gerwin.
Okay, so the report is including both the cost of tipping fees from a local waste disposal company, and then you've included a price list from another organics pickup company in the community. So for $150 per tip, then are you saying that we would get the bin at a school like we've had previously? So the company donates the bin and is just charging us $150 each time it needs to be tipped.
Yeah, so that was communication with the company, and that was their offering essentially, was that if there was a coordinated system where all the schools had their own bin, and if they were on the same pickup schedule, then the bins could be donated. There would be a $150 tipping charge. And the schools and School District 81 has committed to monitoring the bins and calling for dumping and whatnot. They would probably need to coordinate that within themselves to determine the best.
Right, and then then the costs associated, you were thinking that could be weekly pickup or bi-weekly pickup, and I think during the warmer months it would have to be picked up more frequently than in the winter, right?
That's my understanding. And then of course there's no school in the summer, so that takes out a little bit of the problem with wildlife. But yeah, like the it's $150 per tip as opposed to $150 per week. So just sort of estimating at like a bi-weekly. It's hard to know because they're not doing it currently. So it's all new. It's all sort of a pilot.
And it's interesting because I think like each school does it just a little bit differently. So one school might take it might be more financially reasonable to use the green company pickup services. Another school might have more products, so that might be more reasonable to use the bin. And I don't know that we would be making that decision. So I kind of like the idea of having this a waste diversion startup fund, especially since we have that donation from a defunct social planning society. So we could maybe do a pilot for the rest of the school year, because I would really like something to get going before we lose another school year. And we could do a pilot, let the schools decide what works best for them, and then report back to us. And then we can consider what happens starting in September in the new school year.
Any other comments? Councillor Andrews.
Is this something we might want to look at to have included in our budget meetings? Like, if it's something we want to support the schools with, maybe we have a fund, just an annual fund that goes to the schools for the strict purpose of green waste diversion. We can hand that to School District 81, and the way they decide to distribute it amongst the 4 schools can be up to them. We're at least providing the funding to allow that to happen. And just an idea I was having.
The School District 81 putting anything into this? Garbage. I guess I asked for that
If
one.
I may, they currently have systems and informal systems in place, depending on what school is doing what. What they're not currently doing is any organic diversion. So that was our hope with this project, was that we would be diverting organics from the school.
I'm just thinking of a cost sharing system, to go back to Councillor Andrews' idea of us putting in some money, but I'd like to see the school district put in some money too, but maybe that's not going to happen. Just a thought. The other thing I was thinking is, you know, I have dumpsters at apartment buildings, 3-4 yard dumpsters, $180 a month, includes the dumpster and 4 pickups. I'm not sure why this is running $150 per tip. Councillor Penny.
Actually, I didn't at first either, but I can only assume we could go back. When they go to your place, they're going, like, they can pick up at your building, the next building there, and go to all of their commercial areas and not have to worry about what is actually in the bins.
Right.
Whereas here, it's very specific, and it's the one question I was going to ask. If they were to use, say, 2 of the larger bins at 2 schools, and then the other ones decided that they were going to go to the other company, would the price change? Did they mention that? It seemed like you said that if they had 4 bins at the 4 schools and they coordinated the tipping at the same time, because I imagine the truck would have to be specific to that run. So
Yeah, the discussion with the provider, it was specific to if A, B, and C are in place, then this is your price. Of course, there are a lot of things at play as you're discussing, which is, I guess, part of the reason. And then also noting that SD81 has been doing some collection with their paper products and that sort of thing. And that the systems will be different according to the needs of the school. Like the high school has a cooking program, and maybe sometimes they have a cafeteria. I don't think they do right now. So yeah, it's tricky to try and say how many bins, what the size of the bins are. Some schools are very close together. I mean, for the school district to recognize efficiencies, it might be on them to have, like, if there was a fund for them as opposed to council dividing the fund up specifically to the schools.
that's why I would be very much in favor. And Councillor Gerwin was speaking earlier that we just have that grant available. But anyway, sorry.
Mrs. McIver.
I I was just going to remind council that there's a resolution on the books to bring back a community grant program for the 2023 year. So if there was a desire for that program to say have an environmental component, then that might be something for future years. Not to say that this set of funds and for this pilot project could be a test, but just because there might be more schools than just the SD 81 for, or educational institutions or not-for-profits that might want to undertake an environmental program that might be eligible.
So I think that's a great idea. I think we should look at that. But I like Councillor Gerwin's idea of doing a pilot, because we may have, it may be something where we need to find out exactly what the volume of this is, how much we're dealing with. And then maybe it's not quite as large a bin, or maybe there's some other way around it. So I like the idea of Councillor Gerwin's a pilot to see where this is at, how we can accomplish this in a cost-effective manner. And maybe we can partner with School District 81 financially on this. I don't know. Councillor, go ahead, Councillor.
And the hospital's very interested. I met with them a couple of months ago too. They are very interested in doing an organics diversion. They were thinking that they could do it in-house so that they wouldn't have these tipping fees, but if the truck was going along to Carlson and hopping by the hospital anyways, it might be something that we consider. So yeah, that's just more food for thought. And I just think it's really, really important. I'm hoping that we can move forward on getting, because we have had this before COVID, right? We did have a pilot up and running at Carlson School, and the kids were really excited about it. And it was really, I believe, making an impact in our community. And so I hope we can get back to doing that. And again, just to reiterate that the funds that we have was a donation from the defunct Social Planning Society. So there wouldn't be at this time any cost to taxpayer.
So Councillor Gerwin, did you want to make a motion then?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I would make a motion that we instruct staff to proceed developing a green waste diversion startup fund be provided to the district, and having a reporting back component and the time frame as soon as possible so we don't lose this school year.
From the options that Ms. Shepherd has outlined, you want something different than Councillor Gerwin, is that correct?
Well, I guess we could go with option number 1 and put in the amount of $9,500.
Okay. Did you want to add something to that as well, Councillor Gerwin, so it's achieve
Yeah,
some of
we
your
can
goals?
just add on my first essay
Okay.
and add on this last sentence to the essay. That'd be okay.
Do we have seconder for the motion and the essay? Moved by Councillor Gerwin, seconded by Councillor Roper. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Ms. Hanson, Administration Report number 11. Chief Elections Officer and Deputy Chief Elections Officer.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Local government elections will be taking place October 15th of this year. And in order to best prepare for this important event, the Chief Election Officer and Deputy Chief Election Officer should be appointed early within the year. The Local Government Act requires that these appointments are done by Regional Council. The Corporate Manager and Deputy Corporate Manager are recommended for these positions due to their experience with past elections and knowledge of legislation and procedure. And I may add that the school district, since this report, has advised that they would like to have us run their election as well.
Very well. I'll make that motion that the Corporate Manager, Jaylene McIver, be appointed as Chief Elections Officer, and the Deputy Corporate Manager, Teresa Hanson, be appointed as Deputy Chief Elections Officer for conducting the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality 2022 local government elections and any 2022 referenda. Do I have a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Penny. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you very much.
Can only hope, Kyle.
Congratulations on your appointments. Correspondence. Correspondence from Mr. Salvatore and Mark Salvatore and Mrs. Salvataria, and I believe there's another letter in here from Mr. Pinto. Refund training. Number 8.2, letter from Ministry of Forests and Lands Natural Resource Operations, Carolyn Vince, Regional Executive Director on Old Growth Strategic Review. Letter from Northern Health, Kathy Overich, President and Chief Executive Officer, Lab Services at Fort Nelson General Hospital. The letter from Ashley Pinto, letter from BCSPI Steering Committee, Karen Elliott, Mayor of the District of Squamish, and Colleen Evans, Councillor, Campbell River, Membership Opportunities in British Columbia, Social Procurement Initiative, Northern Rockies Region Municipality, letters to Minister of Health, BC Auditor General, and the North Central Local Government Association performance audit of Northern Health Authorities. Is there any comments on any of that correspondence? Very well, moving on. Information package received for information, the council information package of January 12th, 2022, and the council information package of January 19th, 2022. New business items, addition by Councillor Souls, truck convoy and mandates.
Right, okay, so you're probably all aware that some of our local trucking companies have had trucks that are also on their way to Ottawa. And so it is not only just a thing happening elsewhere, but there's people here as well who are taking ownership of what the attempts to send the message that the mandates need to end. And so I just think that the day will be coming before too long as council ourselves, when we see our own community rising up in this way, or sending that message in this way. And we see the various conflicts where there are those who feel that we're operating a segregated society and they're tired of it, it's affecting families and so on. The day will come, I think it's relatively soon, when we as council will have to make a statement on that and what our stand is regarding mandates. And one of the things that I actually, in thinking of just talking about this briefly, I went back to my very initial training as a counselor, and we had a wonderful trainer. And one of the things that has stuck with me through quite a few years is the issue of the fact that you have responsibilities as a municipality because you fall under charter and so on, but you also as a municipality are able to have an opinion. And that's something that's very important. I think it's important that we as a municipality can have an opinion. So to put that in more plain language, you can have mandates that come to a municipality from a higher level of government, and you may not be able to escape those mandates as an action form, but as a council, you can still say that you don't like them. You're allowed to have an opinion and say you don't like them. I, for one, don't like the mandates. I, for one, do not like the direction that they have taken us and the conflict that it has brought in our own community and in our families and in our friendships. And I think that as by and large, they're being ignored on a personal level by most of our constituents. Most of our constituents that I know, at least the ones I know, are not willing to write off different parts of their family or different parts of their friendships and so on. So I think that I really just wanted to talk. I don't want to ask for any kind of a decision on that. I just clearly state where I stand on this. I think the mandates are a problem. I don't think the orders, the vax choices and so on are necessarily a problem. That should be choices, but the mandates are a problem for me, and I support the efforts of the truck rally and so on in their efforts to try to bring attention to the need to take it apart.
Thank you, Councillor Souls. Any comments? Councillor Andrews.
I'd just like to say well said. Thank you.
So Councillor Souls, I've heard similar things when there are Northern Health meetings. Some of the mayors, particularly from the Peace region, are not happy with the mandates. They would like to see less mandates. I know there's many people in our community who'd like to see stronger mandates. And unfortunately, I think this issue has us as a community, and I think even as a province, split. And I think that fracture is getting bigger, larger, worse. And I think we've seen this at the rec center this weekend. We've seen people who are tired of the mandates. I understand that, we've seen an awful lot of Canadians, over 32,000 of them, die from COVID-19, and almost approaching 1 million in the United States. So, I believe that COVID-19 is a serious problem. I, for one, am vaccinated. I've had my vaccinations, but I understand that a lot of people see inconsistencies in the way the government rolls out their mandates, and they're not happy about it. And I can only think that this is only going to get worse. So I hope I see the end of COVID-19, and I hope I see the end of this division in our communities. Anybody else have any other comments before we move on?
I have one more, and that is when you realize that the internal conflicts or the community conflicts or interpersonal conflicts take place, they take place in all levels of our society, our local society. And so when I said that some of us have the ability we may have a mandate, but we have ability to decide whether we like it or not. There are professions within our community that don't have that freedom to make their own opinion known, and some of them are in our medical community. And I find I find that if we could have these elephants in the room come out in the open so that we could talk about them, it would bring great benefit. But there are people who are muzzled and cannot speak. So when I know that that's taking place as a local resident, rather than bring attention to any particular person or so on, just I'm speaking what I know is going on. And I think that we have a very distinct role as a council to bring the opinions of our community to light. And so I just think, like I said, I'm not asking for something right now, but I think we will be asked in no uncertain terms very, very soon to make a statement as to how we feel about this.
Thank you. There's no other comments. I'm going to move on to Councillor Andrews, Fortis BC estimated meter readings, and I'll get to the CAO additions after that.
I just had a few residents bring it to me that they seen their bill from Fortis BC was considerably higher over the past couple of months. Warranted, it's been a lot colder than normal for a long time. So they go to look, see the temperature, see as to why their price is higher, and they've got an estimation notice on their bill. And at this time, you can call and go check your meters and send proper information into Fortis, and they will, on your next bill, issue a credit. But for these people who aren't able to get to all their buildings or they're seeing a big increase when they already don't have a bunch of funds coming in. So I was requested by a couple of community members if we could write a letter to Fortis BC asking if they could have somebody locally read their meters instead of having to be estimated.
Mr. Barry, you've got some information on this?
Well, we did reach out just to get a little bit of information based on your inquiry and your email last week, Councillor Andrews. And what we did get back from Fortis was they have not suggesting it's being done, but what they confirmed, or their community relations representative, Matt Mason, confirmed, is that there is a meter reader locally, and they read the meters monthly. What we didn't get, because it was getting late Friday by the time there was communication, is, what potentially happened last month was the cold weather a factor. And he provided a number of 87%, which is typically the average of the amount of meters that get read monthly. That said, when you talk to certain people in the community who have natural gas, they don't necessarily see anyone have their meters read, or similar cases where there's lots of estimates and the opportunity to take pictures or whatnot of your meter. So just for reference for council, we did reach out to see if we can get some information, and accordingly, council may wish for us to kind of adjust the messaging in the letter too. Because at the end of the day, it's around having meters read, I'm assuming, in terms of having them read, so that less estimates, more actual numbers, I'm guessing, right?
So Councillor Andrews, did you want to make a motion to have, I'm sorry, Councillor Goering, did you?
Yeah, I just wanted to add to that. Mine doesn't get read all winter, and it might be other buildings that are not occupied. Because if you don't keep the sidewalk and the gates shoveled and cleared, they won't go into your premises to do the reading. So although there is a local meter reader, I'm not prepared to do that. So I wait for spring and we settle it up. But
Hope for a credit.
right. So that might be some people that might be experiencing that too.
So Councillor Andrews, did you want us to write a letter to Fortis?
Well, I'd put it out there that we write a letter requesting some information and clarification as to why these people are being estimated, and if we could potentially have less people being estimated. And maybe it's an information thing that needs to go out, because maybe there are hindrances to people's meters that they're unaware of. Maybe we can just help a conversation come out.
I would
make a
second
recommendation.
Councillor Andrews' motion. Any other comments on the motion? All those in favor? Carries unanimously. Mr. Barry, rec update.
Thanks, Mayor. So as I'm going to assume all of you are aware, and Mayor, you made the comment earlier in regards to some of the issues or concerns we had at the rec center this weekend. So during minor hockey this weekend, minor hockey requested our assistance to deal with some patrons that weren't following the PHOs. One of the issues that we were dealing with was the gathering of patrons in the skaters lobby at the windows so they could watch or spectate. At times we had benches moved the skaters lobby and dragged over to the windows, and in one case we actually had someone or people bring in a lawn chair from outside to sit at the window area to spectate. Based on some of the discussion that has occurred with council, I mean, we can, as staff, we totally appreciate the concerns and in some cases the frustrations people have with the PHOs and the challenges that they bring. The reality is we're required to follow the PHOs. We don't have an option not to follow them as an organization. Council, as was mentioned, I mean, if wish could communicate concerns, communicate issues or whatnot, but one thing you can't do actually is pass a resolution and tell us not to follow them, because it's law and we have to follow them. And as staff, we're not going to stand on our soapboxes and communicate as representatives of the organization what our feelings are of them either. I mean, because that's not what our role is. So unfortunately, in these situations, we're put in a bit of odd predicament, because as staff, we do what we can to create a bit of a balance to provide that service for the community. And one of the things that's been occurring, honestly, is the spectator pieces. If you're a spectator in the sport, the PHO requires the individual or the patron to have a vaccination check, which is what minor hockey does at the door of the arena to allow people in. To ensure that we weren't necessarily going against the PHOs, there's other areas of the facility where you typically in the past could watch through the windows upstairs and whatnot in the viewing areas that are currently, the screens are down. with the exception of the area in the actual skaters lobby, because we also have patrons that rather watch, I mean, I say vaccinated patrons who'd rather watch from the skaters lobby, honestly, a little bit warmer versus sit in the arena. The challenge we had this week, and it was a little bit more pronounced, and we were getting complaints, and we can't just turn a blind eye from it. And one of the decisions of staff at the time yesterday was, I mean, working with minor hockey, was to put the curtains up, which I'm well aware, based on the feedback, was not received well by the community, people in the community. The challenge we have, like I said, though, is the unfortunate reality is that our requirement as an organization is if we allow that to happen, then technically we're required to ask for vaccination verification for people to spectate even from that area. And that creates a bit of a, put us in a very awkward predicament to try to deal with this and try to have that balance. It obviously, created other issues because people start to gather and congregate at the actual doorways going into the arenas and whatnot. So we're meeting with the minor hockey this week. So on Wednesday morning, we're going to meet with the representatives from minor hockey. Of course, the RCMP has communicated with us too and said they're there, but to assist if required. But again, our role, what we don't want to do, honestly, is have people hauled out of the rec center kicking and screaming. We're trying to navigate this as peacefully and as appropriately as we can. So we're going to have that discussion to try to understand what an appropriate path forward is with minor hockey to try to mitigate any future occurrences, and also reach out to the province to potentially see if there's any options in terms of things that we may or may not be able to do. My gut, based on previous correspondence when we've questioned PHOs, is we get the answer typically we don't want. And if we want to create a balance, because we thought, based on the amount of people we're talking about here, we'd more than be able to satisfy proper spacing and whatnot with the amount of windows we have in the whole facility. But technically, we can't do that. And we don't just get the complaints that we put curtains up, we get complaints on the other side that we're doing things to try to, for lack of a better word, skirt the rules or not necessarily follow the rules, because we're trying to create that balance. So that said, totally understand the concerns. Currently, those curtains are not in place because it hasn't been issued during the week, during weekdays. And I can't suggest that we're not going to have some kind of restriction up, because who knows what the province may come back with, or our discussions, or what happens. What we're doing, what we can on our end to try to navigate it with the least amount of resistance as possible. And we'll see what the discussions we have with minor hockey on Wednesday, and also additionally with assistance of Aaron and Stacy, who's been working diligently to try to sometimes understand or interpret the restrictions. And in this case, they're very clear. The restrictions are very clear when it talks about spectating in an event, what an event is, what a spectator is, and what you're required to do. And that's something that we didn't want to do, honestly, yesterday, is start requesting verification, because we know the individuals were standing outside working. It's just, again, it was an awkward, challenging situation, and we spent a considerable amount of time trying to assist the staff. They did, the decision they made, we support, just more or less because they needed to do something to try to ensure their concern, honestly, is that the tournament was going to get shut down too. And in some cases that was hinted towards us, and we said we don't want to be part of that decision. It's a minor hockey decision, because at the end of the day, the whole reason these certain rules are in place, exemptions, I guess we'll call them, is to allow the kids to play. And that's one thing that we didn't want to impact for sure. So just want to let council know we are working on any discussion or questions we're obviously to take, but that's where we kind of sit currently. And it has created some challenges.
So I think, from our position, council is here to set policy, not to tell the administration or the staff how to do their job. I think our position, unless I'm very wrong, is that we instruct our staff to follow the public health orders set down by the province. We have no choice in that. And I think they've done an excellent job. And I know I've heard lots of comments and compliments to the staff member that was dealing with that over the weekend, very difficult circumstances. He has my sympathies, but I think we all agree that the instructions to the administration is that this municipality follows the public health orders. We expect them to carry it out to the best of their ability without getting down and deciding about who's asking people for what vaccinations and how much of curtains, if any, are put down. I think this is a decision that has to be made by our administration. Councillor Andrews.
Just to kind of oversimplify it to make sure I kind of got the idea behind it. Minor hockey set up a policy, so anybody walking through the doors into the cold side was getting checked at this tournament. Getting checked for
So A is not a
vaccinations.
tournament.
Pardon me?
A is not a tournament.
Okay.
Here we go. No, don't say that. No.
For whoever was spectating.
So the requirement for minor hockey is they're required, it's their responsibility as the user. And they have, it's some internal procedures, but the policy they have in place, or procedure they have in place is a requirement of the province. It's a PHO.
Right.
So in order for spectators to watch the game or watch practice or whatever it might be with the youth sports, vaccination check is required. In order, when we work with minor hockey at the onset of some of these PHOs, the best place that they thought to do this would be at the arena doors, because we're not required to check for vaccinations at the door of the facility. Right. Certain activities require vaccination checks, but as a patron, as an unvaccinated patron, what you're supposed to do technically by the orders is you're supposed to drop off your child. You can help them with the skates in the skaters lobby or whatnot, and then you're not supposed to stick around to watch the game. So, or whatever's going on. If you're vaccinated, you want to stick around. Then, if you want to watch, that was where the checkpoint was made, and inside in the arena itself. Yeah.
So then spectators, instead of getting checked, were watching from the skaters lobby, which created an abundance of people with benches being moved, chairs being placed, which caused another issue. And the easiest way for boots on the ground to mitigate that was to put up the curtain.
Yeah.
It's kind of
Yeah.
the very oversimplified.
Essentially oversimplified. It
Okay.
wasn't like every time we turned around, it was bench move, but yes, they did get moved and whatnot, but. I mean,
It was
the
causing
challenges-
other issues and yeah. Okay. No, I get it.
Just to make things a little bit more murky, is the Minor Hockey Association has got a set of rules as well, along with the public health orders. So that just gets things a little bit more confusing. Councillor Penny.
Just want to know, so we're not required to ask for vaccination passport to get in the building. So is it actually in the order somewhere, that we're supposed to do our best to restrict any vision from outside the building or outside the area that the activity is taking place?
So the way the order is written, and I don't think it is that I can provide it for council, but the way the order is written is actually more around the activities. It's not necessary. So spectating is specified that you can't spectate in the order. We're also required to prevent and mitigate any kind of gatherings or a congregation of people. And it's when the order outlines what you can do in an area, spectating is one of it. It's also there's a list of different items. I can kind of look it up here. So
While you're looking for
yes.
that, though, Scott, in order to spectate, you need to show your vaccination
correct.
stats
Correct.
anywhere in the rec center. To spectate anywhere in the rec center, you need to, if asked, you need to show your.
So if somebody is watching an event and they're not vaccinated, that's a violation of the public health order. Doesn't matter if they're inside, outside, where they are. They're spectating, they're not vaccinated, and they're watching an event.
That's what I
Indoors.
understand.
So
Yeah.
the event, so there's a definition of event, of course, inside event, outside event, it's very lengthy. The wording is a person may permit a place to be used for, so that would be us, or into minor hockey, but may permit a place to be used for, may organize, may work or volunteer at, may participate in, may be a spectator at, or may be otherwise present at an inside event if the provisions of this part and part E, which is proof of vaccination, are complied with. So it's a very lengthy technical description, but basically there's a number of things that you can or can't do based on what your status is, right? And that's not our rules. That's rules that we're required to follow. And we do what we can to, like I said, in an effort not to be accused of skirting the rules or looking for loopholes. We also try to create a balance. We understand the frustrations, and we also don't want to, we do what we can. And even yesterday was like, we don't want to put staff in a position where they're trying to be plucked in the middle between a discussion between who thinks which is right in terms of people's beliefs. And because honestly, as staff, it's none of our business, right? But what we do know is when what we need to default to when we're being challenged what we're doing is we need to default to what the rules are, right? Because I mean, as much as we can get beat up in the public in terms of certain decisions that staff's made or decisions yesterday put curtains up, what we do know is we followed what we're told we're supposed to follow, right? And even though in our own sidebar conversations, we may have conversations regarding what we think is right or wrong, or we have our own frustrations at times. We did what we did to because we were, staff over there we're following the rules. And what I did this morning is went over and met with that staff and said that I'm not going to apologize for the actions that occurred yesterday because you guys made the best decisions you could given the situation. You're trying to do the right things, and the worst thing they were worried about is having tournament shut down. Not tournament, the hockey game shut down.
Because there was no tournament.
Sorry.
Councillor Penny.
And with me questioning it was, I assumed that it was direct in the rules in order for us to be doing this. I mean, I do want to thank all staff in this building and in that building. I do not envy what you've been having to deal with from the onset of this, and I'll be as happy as everyone else when it's over. And
we will all be quite happy when this is behind us, for sure.
And I mean, you're put in such a horrible situation that you're mandated to do it. And in order for us to enjoy this beautiful rec center that we spend a quarter of our yearly budget on and still be able to use it at least, having to follow these mandates, irregardless of personal feelings on it. I mean, I just really appreciate what you've done.
And I'd like to, I mean, at no point during this conversation with council do we feel that council is pressuring or requesting, and if you call or text or if it's a Sunday or Saturday or Friday night and ask the questions, that's not, I mean, I'd much rather you do that so we can provide, the more we can get that information out, the constituent calls and bend your ear. I'd much rather if you take, if you don't hesitate to call or can communicate and ask a question so we can provide what we're doing, because that's essentially that was our day yesterday. Basically, it was just trying to navigate through this to continue to do this. And of course, it was a lose-lose process, basically, to be honest with you. There was nothing that we can do to have an outcome that everyone will be happy with, right? Because the community is split, right?
I think, I think council commends the staff. I think every one of us do on their efforts. And I hope you would pass that on, that council fully supports the efforts of our employees in this difficult time. Councillor Gerby.
Yeah, I would just like to reiterate that I know staff does not go out looking for infractions. So there's complaints on both sides, right? There's complaints like, and how does staff even navigate that? People are complaining that, well, I know that that person is not, whatever the status happens to be, and staff, is not going out looking for people that aren't following the PHOs. But when complaints are received, they have to deal with it, because we can't ignore that either. That's dereliction of duty. And so, yeah, nobody's going out there looking to fight with anybody.
Thank you. Are there any more comments for Mr. Berry? Very well, Mr. Berry, we'll move on to the Northern Rockies Senior Society.
A while ago, or just a short while ago, I can't recall if it was last meeting or not, but council passed a resolution in support of an NDI grant for the Northern Rockies Senior Society. NDI has communicated back now with Northern Rockies Senior Society and has requested, as part of that grant application, that if council would commit to the $15,000 annual, so typically councils committed or provided $15,000 annually for the seniors bus, and they're asking for a 3-year commitment, or NDI. I'm guessing NDI is requesting it so that they can process the application, because it's a requirement that there's a commitment that that funding would be available for the next 3 years. So Northern Rockies reached out to us, of course, and we're just passing that request on for council's discussion.
I can't think of any reason why we wouldn't in the next 3 years. A little bit hesitant about committing this in the future, but I would support that, I think. Councillor Gerwin?
Being that this is our last year, I don't know whether it would be appropriate to make a commitment for the next council, if we even can do that, like, because I guess a council can rescind any decision that we make, can't they? I'm not really sure. That was my first thought. And my second thought is, given that we didn't see the full application to NDIT, I don't even really know what the project, when I asked for more details on the project, it was to get another bus because this bus isn't meeting the need. But is that going to include the community as a whole? Is it just, does it continue to be for seniors and people with disabilities? Is it going to be able to move children? Because currently it doesn't because of the car seat legislation. So I would just like some more information before we make such a commitment.
I believe I have some answers for you. Ms. Shepherd?
Thanks. I can speak to that a little bit. I was working with the Senior Society to get the grant application in just before Christmas. And so it's actually for operating costs. It's not that often that there is grant funding for operating costs. It's normally for capital. So it's for full-time operation of the second bus, which they have, but they haven't been able to operate. And there's a variety, there's several community groups who have supported the application. I think there's 5, and are working with Senior Society to, upon successful award of the funding, further the service. So there would be opportunities for the Family Development Society, for the Hospice Society. There's support from Fort Nelson First Nation and others, I believe. So it is a fulsome application for increased services. Currently, the Senior Society, even though it's called the Seniors Bus, they are providing services whenever they can. So currently, people can phone the operator and request a ride, and the operator will make a decision based on their availability and availability of the bus.
So that said, then currently the bus operates Monday to Friday and daytime hours only. Is in this new proposal, is there any capacity to provide weekend and evening services?
Yeah, so it's currently operating according to the needs. And I think because there is only the one bus, that's what they've been able to do. One of the asks from a different organization was for an evening program that they couldn't currently have transportation for. And so it was that thought that because right now there's only one driver, if there was another driver, a second bus, they would be able to do a variety of routes and respond to bigger needs within the community.
If we fail to approve this funding for the next 3 years, does that imperil their application to NDIT?
My understanding is that if the NRM does not commit, is not able to commit or whatnot, the funding can be summarized under like applicant contribution. So it would, right now it's listed as a funder, as one of the funders, but they would just have to switch their application to say it's the applicant contribution, and then they would hope to secure that funding elsewhere.
Mr. Barry, did you?
I was going to add to what Hillary said. It's my understanding from reading the email that came through today is it's your typical grant application where you provide as much in-kind help. So they've done that with various organizations in the community that provide in-kind contributions to them. And then, of course, the financial contribution that the NRM provides. If you were providing 3 years from now, $15,000 a year for the next 3 years, that's a $45,000 monetary contribution that goes into the grant piece. And I think that's what drives out what the final outcome of that grant application is essentially what the request is. And like Hill said, they obviously, the organization could say they can contribute internally, but the question is if they have the funds to contribute or not.
Councillor Penny.
So we have given this money in the past, correct? Give it every year, and we have every year since the bus has been there? Pretty much.
Well, as far as I remember, $15,000 each year is not another Rocky Society for the bus.
Okay.
I don't know exactly when it started or when the bus rolled out.
I wouldn't have any problem with making a motion that we give them what they're asking for, the 3-year commitment of 15,000. We've been doing it every year anyways, and it could give them a knee up here to, pardon me? Pre-approval, yes, pre-approval.
Moved by Councillor Penny that we approve their request for $15,000 a year for the next 3 years. Moved by Councillor Penny, seconded by Councillor Andrews. Councillor Roper, did you want to say anything, or are you just voting on this?
I was just going to second it. Now I'll take a vote.
Okay, very well. All those in favor? That carries unanimously. Thank you. Standing items for discussion, councillor reports. Are there any councillor reports? Councillor Andrews.
Yeah, I spent 3 days last week in the BC's Natural Resource Forum. There was actually tons of good information, which is all available online on the BC Natural Resources Forum.ca website. The kind of overall theme this year was partnerships. So we got to listen to a lot of industry players and government and First Nations representatives, and very positive outlook for BC and the potential for COVID restoration programs, restarting our economy. Mining seems to be a major focus. They talked mostly about mining, forestry quite a bit, but definitely more about mining. So maybe that's something we need to be trying to market more up here, because at one point we did have a lot of copper and zinc, and that seems to be what they're looking for at the moment is copper. A lot of emphasis on our hydroelectricity and how that's our future forward for low carbon BC and being net neutral carbon. We need all of the hydroelectricity we can muster to start powering everything, because we need more aluminum, and Rio Tinto has the aluminum, but they need the electricity. So there's big emphasis on that as well. Other than that, I was.
Okay, any other council reports? Very well. I also attended the resource forum, but I didn't make very many of them. I would note that Chief Gale did present at the forum as well. That was very well received. I traveled to Fort St. John to attend the NDIT RAC meeting. And there was a few other engagements that I just forgot to jot down. That was it for me. Oh, Chamber of Commerce presentation. It was a nice Chamber of Commerce presentation. That was good. That was their annual meeting. Is there any questions from the public? Mrs. Vandersteen.
Thank you, Mayor Foster. I would just like to go back to Ms. Shepherd's report on the business license and bylaw review, and request that in the process of that review, as well as looking at what other communities are doing, I would request that we engage with the business community locally as well for their input on that process.
Mr. Barry. Ms. Shepherd. Miss Jacobs.
So noted. Well, yeah.
My apologies.
That won't be an issue.
It won't be a problem. We will do that.
Thank you.
Love putting everybody on the spot. That's just fun. Very well. Concluding the business of the Northern Rockies Regional Municipality, I will declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you, everyone.